Everyone, welcome to another Patreon topic video. One of the last ones for my January topics. This one is for Rysosis, and the topic is shmup business models. I think this is a really interesting topic to discuss. So basically, how has shmup business evolved over the years, right? From the days of taking your quarters to now taking your credit card information on your cell phone, I guess. How have shmup business models evolved, and I guess how has that affected the gameplay design and the way these games are created? I think that's a really cool topic. So let's go back and talk about the early days, the arcade days of shmups, something we're all pretty familiar with. So there was a time where shmups were among the premier arcade genres, right? I think, again, I can't go back in time and look at the books or anything, but just from what I remember from hanging out with my friends and being an arcade player myself, I felt like shmups did bring in quite a bit of coin back in the day. They were actually really well optimized to make money if you think about it, even more so than other genres at the time. I think the only ones that might be even better are racing games. Think of how many people sucked up their quarters to racing games, but so what makes shmups really good in an arcade setting for making money? Well, everyone's going to immediately say they're difficult, right? I don't think that's necessarily the only reason, though. Yes, shmups are difficult, but I think one other thing that made them make a lot of money is that they were very fast. They took your money extremely quickly, but they did it in a way that made you feel like it was your fault. That's something that would be interesting to hear what you guys think in the comments about this, but I remember as a kid, if I ever played an arcade game and I felt it just straight up took my money and I didn't really have a chance to play the game, you know what I mean, like the game was cheap, basically the game was just out there to take your money. There were actually a lot of arcade games like this in the day. I'd avoid the machine. I would say, okay, this game's stupid, and never play that machine. The games that consistently got my money were games that were challenging, but they felt like I was in control, that I could, through skill, make my way through the game. So fighting games were a great example. Well-made fighting games, because there were some cheap ones that just took your money. Well-made fighting games, you know, Tekken, you know, all the usual suspects. And then, as far as, like, not puzzle games, what do you call them, like old-school arcade games, like Pac-Man, Mr. Do. Mr. Do was one of my favorites, actually, because I felt like it was a little more lenient with your money than something like Pac-Man, where I could get quite a, you know, like stage 4 or 5 in Mr. Do on one credit, whereas Pac-Man, they had the speed of the ghosts set up to like ultra high in my arcades. They were just like lightning ghosts, and so they'd take my money really quick, so I didn't really mess with Pac-Man. Same with Donkey Kong too. I know a lot of people spent a lot of money playing Donkey Kong. As a kid, I felt like this game was just sucking my money up too fast. However, when it came to shmups, they were among some of my favorites as a kid, but not... I wasn't diehard about them or anything, but they were kind of like... what I would do is, I'd play all the usual, like, important games to me, and then when I had some money left over, I'd go throw them into Raiden and play a bunch of Raiden. And the thing about Raiden, again, is it was definitely a hard game, but it didn't feel like it was just sucking up my money. And so I think that's the early model of what shmups were going for. Was, I'm sure there were just some of them that were designed to straight up take your money without mercy, and a lot of those come into mind. But I think the ones that are actually a little more successful, like Raiden and stuff like that, Gradius I'm assuming, they had a fairness to them, to where people felt like, okay, I'm not getting ripped off, and there's gameplay here to be had, right? I hate arcade games, and a lot of people do too, that have those gotcha moments where you'll just be flying along and all of a sudden you get killed by something you couldn't see coming unless you knew it was coming, kind of things. Shmups can do that. I think that's one reason why cave games are really cool too, is cave games rarely have moments like that. Most cave games, they give you a chance. It's a tough chance, but they give you a chance to try and get out of the situation and fly your way through a lot of the things. So I'm kind of already getting ahead of myself. So let's talk about the classic shmups, faster speed, faster bullets, more memorization, in some ways. And then when you get into kind of the middle era of stuff like Grega, the early Donpachi games and stuff like that, then you start to hit that nice sweet spot, right, where the game's difficult, but it kind of gives you a chance if you're coming into it. It's not taking your money too fast. And I think it's funny because I am convinced that the reason for that huge difficulty spike in Stage 3 is because Cave wants your money by Stage 3. Like, they want to just get you off the machine by Stage 3 or get you to throw credits to them. So they'll give you Stage 1 and Stage 2 to kind of like play the game, get used to it. And Stage 2, they're like, hand over the money, punk. And a lot of Cave games have that. Like, that all of a sudden Stage 3 is just going to take your money. I think a lot of shmups are designed that way, actually. And if you think from a business point of view, you actually don't want too gentle of a difficulty curve. What you want is kind of you want a nice ease in to get them invested and say, okay, I'm good at this game, and then you just want to hit them with the spike so that you can take their money faster than if you slowly ease them into the game, right? I think, I remember when I talked to, if you guys haven't seen it before, I talked to the XR Arcadia CEO, and he was saying that an issue with Toho games and some of the common indie shmups these days is that their difficulty curves are actually too kind, to where players are going to get too much time on the machines. And so that's, I think, Cave and Raising in those games really nailed that nice sweet spot. And of course, we're talking about shmup business models. We have to talk about rank, right? One of the most controversial aspects of shmup design. And I think it's pretty hard to deny that it was probably invented due to monetary reasons rather than gameplay, design philosophy reasons. So rank is, if you guys aren't familiar, as you play the games and you play them well, so to say, or you start to rack up score, you seem to show some sort of proficiency in the game effectively. The game keeps track of that, and it starts to build up the difficulty the farther you progress and the better you play, essentially. And so a whole metagame starts to establish around this. Grega is the most famous example of this, right? Where a lot of what you do is influenced by that ranking system. Same thing with DOJ to a certain extent. Like, when I play DOJ for survival, I'm doing a lot of things that are bad for your score, but they keep your rank low. And it's interesting to see different ranking systems, because some can be sort of manipulated, and then others, I feel like a DOJ is a pretty solid rank system where if you're playing for score, you just kind of have to embrace it, right? There's not a whole lot of rank manipulation that you do necessarily. And so rank was introduced basically to get the good players or the experienced players off the machine faster, right? So I think that's a really, business-wise, it's a very clever decision, right? Because you're avoiding that issue of, so let's say you didn't have rank and you just made Loop 1 Donpachi Loop 2 difficult. You just made the game really hard for everyone. You're going to scare away the casual, arcade goers. They're going to walk in, they're going to play level 1, get destroyed in 3 seconds, be like, I'm never playing this game again. This thing is stupid, it's just trying to take my money. So I think that's why rank is a really clever mechanic, because it still allows the beginners to get in, but it punishes the higher level players and tries to get them off the machine faster. It's a really weird dynamic if you think about it. Arcade games want to get you on the machine, but then they want to get you off it, right? Or they want you to keep pumping quarters in if you're still on the machine. So that's kind of the end of the arcade era, right? And I think basically the arcade era is over. I know arcades still exist, and there's the XR Arcadia, which is trying to bring them back, which is really cool. And if we see a bit of a renaissance in that area, that will be really nice. But I think effectively the arcade era is now over, and so that's had a big change on how shmup design works now, right? Because it makes you think, is rank necessary anymore? Is rank something we want to see anymore? Is it still a useful gameplay feature? Is it not? That's up in the air. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, especially because rank can be implemented in so many different ways, right? But I do think some of the design decisions that I think were clever were the way Mushi did it, where it had difficulty select. Rather than having rank and stuff like that, you can just straight up ask the player, okay, how good do you think you are? Do you want to play Ultra? Do you want to play Maniac? Do you want to play Original? So that's a cool way to go about things. And I think in the current way shmups are made, I think that the older style of having that big difficulty spike on stage 3 really isn't necessary anymore. I think maybe having a more gradual difficulty curve, not too gradual towards boring, but not like how it goes in KVM was like da 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 bam, the wall right there. I think that's greatly affected how shmups are made and how they're played. But again, I'm supposed to be talking more about the business, not the gameplay. So the economy of shmups these days is very complicated because it's kind of getting pulled in two directions, right? Where we have now the emerging, or already emerged mobile market, and then we have the PC market and the console market, right? And I almost feel like these are three separate markets at this point, and which one you target might affect how the game is made and sold and is priced and all those sorts of things. So let's start off by talking about mobile, because that's the one that we need to get into. So obviously I'm not a huge fan of shmups being only available on mobile, because it's just the gameplay experience to me is not as solid as playing it on the PC or a console. However, I feel like the mobile market is a nice place for shmups to exist. I think they have a nice niche in there. It's just a whole different beast, right, than shmups for PC and all those sorts of things. And so that's the shame of it. I would like to see business models kind of figure some way to translate from mobile to PC to all those sorts of things more cleanly than what we've seen before. Because even shmups that come out on PC, like Danmaku Unlimited 3, if they're originally intended for mobile, that kind of shows in some ways. But I think Dan 3 does a great job overall of kind of balancing those different platforms. And then also the indie scene, right? So another issue with shmup business models these days is that those arcade devs, those big studios, are sort of stepping out, and so shmups have been sort of downgraded to a lesser genre. I hate to say, like consumer-wise, that is the opinion. I talked about this in my reviews. I've got a lot of backlash too when I start talking about how shmups should be taken seriously and should be sold at full prices, as long as they have the features and the materials players are looking for. Because, I mean, price-wise, you're going to get hundreds and hundreds of hours of gameplay from a shmup if it's a well-designed, well-implemented shmup, an M2 port, basically, Ketsui Destiny. You're going to get hundreds of hours out of that thing. But at the same time, you're not going to get hundreds of hours out of these thrown-on ROM Psycho ports on the Switch, right? Even if you like those games, it's just there's only so much input lag you can tolerate before you start looking for alternatives, playing Dreamcast versions or whatever, or emulating. So I think shmup business models are in a really weird position where we kind of have to budget ourselves low, but we can't lowball ourselves and devalue the genre. So I think a really nice kind of middle ground for shmups to aim for is around the $15-$20 range. And then this is going to be controversial, but I think DLC fits in pretty well with the shmup model, and I think it should be charged for. For instance, Blue Revolver is going to come out with double action, and I think it's going to come out free for people who already own Blue Revolver, which is cool for us, but at the same time, for the developer, because the population of players is so low, and the value we're getting is so high already, it almost feels like we're doing the developer a disservice by taking it free, right? It's not like mass games where there's millions of players who are going to play Blue Revolver. It's more like you want to kind of maximize what you can get out of the player base who value your games. So I almost feel like I think DLC for shmups is actually a good idea. I think it's a good idea because you get the kind of lowish end price, $20, $30, and you can just give people their bare bone-ish experience if they want it, and then you can add in please put a stage select though, right? To like put the basics in there. But I'm saying like if you want to get the extras and charge for the extras, like the arranges, all those sorts of things, extra soundtracks, M2 kind of did that. I don't really have a problem with that because I think it's a nice middle ground to where you're keeping the price lowish for the new people who don't care to still impulse buy, but then you're providing the full experience to the players who are invested and, you know, can pony up with some cash for some arranges and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of a really good business model right now, is release the game around 20 bucks, and then support it with some extra arranges and stuff and charge for them. Don't give them away for free if you don't have to, right? That's probably going to be controversial, and I know as devs, especially in the shmup environment, like, it's a tough environment, man. Shmup, I don't know why shmup players are so freaking stingy. It's like we get mad about everything. I don't know what it is, but yeah, I think if for instance, if Zero Ranger had some arrange that came out and they charged for it, I think it'd be totally justified to charge for that. Same thing with Double Action. I think that's totally justified to charge for, and I don't see why we expect to just to receive free material all the time. So anyway, thanks for watching, and let me shout out my patrons: Dingo, Anthony A, Ben Nigan, Brian Shiver, Double Vision, Dunpill 2064, Full Set, Retro Shmupper, Gus, Kiwi, Jacob Spring, Jake Ryan, Joe Angelo, John, K, Kinotosi, Quentin, Mark Sloan, Maz, Nathaniel Davis, N Electron, Okla Kugels, Omkol, Psych, Rysosis, Sugumo, Plasmo, Young Money Sui, and Yatsakaja. Thanks for watching.